Engineer's Best Weapon by Uncle Dane. I'm ready for this. This looks like the Wrangler. I'm ready to hear him explain the Wrangler as well as the tactics used with it. Oh, thanks, YouTube. I've only seen 2 of his intros, but both of these have honestly been bangers. I absolutely have loved these.
Weapon review. The Wrangler isn't really a weapon, it's more of a tool than anything really, but we're gonna call it a weapon anyway. It doesn't actually do any damage to players, rather it enables your sentry gun to be really, really good. It allows you to become the sentry.
Is this a Pokemon remix? Epic.
And not in the same way that a brass beast heavy becomes a sentry. You become an unstoppable force that is unbelievably overpowered, and I think it should be nerfed. But before we get into that, we'll start off at the more balanced end of the Wrangler stats, being able to override the auto-aim function and giving yourself control of what your sentry fires at. In classic TF2 flavor text fashion, the sentence, "take manual control of your sentry gun," means so much more than it actually suggests. First of all, when you're using the Wrangler to shoot bullets, the firing speed of your gun is doubled, effectively making one of the most powerful damage dealers in the game twice as deadly. In fact,
what do you mean? What do you mean it doubles your fire rate? Where does that say that on the weapon?
Using the Wrangler with the mini sentry increases its DPS even higher than an unwrangled level 1 sentry. When manually controlling a level 3, the rockets also refresh slightly faster as well, making a fully upgraded wrangled sentry gun able to put out some serious damage when focusing things down, which is basically what this feature is all about. Targeting down singular enemies with twice as much DPS. And sure, you can use it to pester a few people outside of the sentry's auto-aim range, but damage fall-off still applies, making the Wrangler at long distances more of a pressure tactic to try and get an annoying sniper in the distance to quit looking at you. However, the damage fall-off doesn't actually apply to the distance between the sentry gun and the target, but rather the distance between you and the target. So when focusing someone down with your laser pointer, it can often be beneficial to close that distance between you and your enemy if possible. Just remember that pressing W at an enemy is riskier than holding back, but in my experience, most players' instinct is to shoot at the wrangled gun rather than the engineer controlling it, which actually happens to be the major counter to this unlock entirely, but let's just keep that between you and me. Now you might be saying, but wouldn't it be better to just allow your sentry gun to aim for you since it's going to have perfect tracking, and I am not a godlike aiming machine like my sentry gun? Well, you'd have a good point there if there wasn't already a simpler form of auto-aim on the Wrangler as well. That's right, almost as if you were going back to playing on the Xbox 360, the Wrangler comes with aim assist. Nothing too crazy, but enough to make it viable at medium to long ranges. This feature pretty much ensures that the manual control isn't completely useless outside of your sentry's default bubble, but it also makes it relatively difficult to aim your rockets, specifically to pop opponents up into the air since it always seems to lock onto the center of their hitbox, which can be frustrating because, I don't know, I just want to combo somebody as engineer, goddammit, there we go. However, since it won't auto-lock onto disguised spies, you can do hilarious stuff like this. And you can use the rockets to move sticky bombs out from underneath your sentry gun when you've got somebody trying to stack them. You can also just...
That's actually really funny. I love that you can physics them off to the side with the rocket. I didn't even think of that. What a great video already.
Just use the bullets to destroy them, but that takes a lot more precision than just blowing them away. Speaking of getting blown away, did you know that you can fly as engineer? Sentry jumping is an extremely niche thing that you can do with the Wrangler, and it's a shame how unviable it is in typical balanced games because it's a lot of fun, takes skill to get good at, and allows NGs to shake up the relatively stale sentry spot metagame. But because of the unavoidable reality that it requires you to set up a level 3 sentry gun, and the unfortunate reality that damaging yourself with rockets puts you at a huge disadvantage when making an offensive play, sentry jumping is more of a gimmick than an actual strategy.
I mean, you got to give it style points, though, right? Like, you got to give it to it.
You'd probably only see an engineer sentry jumping in a serious game in order to get out of an unfavorable situation, which is basically just as risky as standing your ground because of the health it costs, or you'd see someone doing it just messing around trying to land a market partner. But because of the time it takes to set up a level 3, the damage you take from the rockets, and likely fall damage after landing, sentry jumping just isn't something worth practicing. In my opinion, the most viable mobility technique to use with the Wrangler is actually bullet jumping, which is a lot more limiting than jumping with rockets, but ends up being way faster, especially when pairing it with a mini or a level 1 sentry. This technique is pretty much only useful when trying to clear short distances or access areas that are slightly out of the engineer's reach, but is still handy enough to include in the flank engineer player's skill set. Unfortunately,
I mean, honestly, though, like, it's a form of movement, simple as, right? You're able, even if it's just short gaps, like, the fact that you are still able to problem solve, to clear short gaps, is already a selling point. Like, that is something that falls under advanced movement, and thus, whether it's getting a health kit, whether it's getting ammo, whether it's repositioning, right? Like, because I know there's I don't remember if it's in the same slot or not. Whatever the thing that like warps your sentry to you, I don't remember what it is. I can't remember the tools offhand. I'm sorry. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff here.
you still have to take into account the damage penalty when shooting yourself with bullets. Perhaps the coolest thing about sentry jumping is the entire world that it can open up to people who enjoy doing community things like jump maps. Now, there may not be a whole lot of engineer-specific jump maps out there, but believe it or not, the engineer can often complete most jump maps that were designed for soldiers or demo man, even the pogo and rocket sync sections. The reason for this is because the sentry gun actually shoots 4 rockets rather than 1, and despite doing less damage than a soldier's rocket, for example, they still give a larger amount of knockback, enabling the engineer to fly much, much further with 1 jump than a soldier or a demo man can. Sentry jumping for the fun of it is something that I like to do in my spare time just because it's a challenge to try and see how far I can get on a jump map intended for other classes, but in your typical TF2 match, this skill hardly ever comes into play. But despite all of that, I highly recommend you guys try it out. Jump.tf's beginner server is a good place to start, and you can actually complete the first section with just a mini sentry if you're good enough at bullet jumping. If any of you guys want me to make a sentry jumping and bullet jumping tutorial in the future, just let me know if that's something you'd like to see in the comments. I'm sure I can throw something together for a separate video if that's something people would like to see. But in the
I think it'd be cool. I mean, I'm sure the video already exists, right? But like that's actually really cool.
meantime, it's time for Uncle Dane to stop gushing over how awesome the good part of the Wrangler is and get to the dumb part. And it's been right in front of us the entire time. This thing, this
shield.
Big, bright, translucent sphere is what tips the Wrangler over the edge from a fun tool to make your sentry gun situationally stronger at the cost of relying on your own skill into a brain-dead damage sponge that takes no effort to abuse and way too much comparative effort to counter the shield. The Wrangler's shield blocks a whopping 66% of incoming damage, with the downside of also blocking 66% of incoming heals. Now, already, without the Wrangler, a sentry gun on its own is a very powerful defensive tool. It's literally the best area denial thing in the game, and a lot of the reason why it's so powerful at keeping people away from stuff isn't because it puts out a lot of damage. It's because the mere existence of a sentry gun delays pushes. A bad player will walk into the sentry gun and die, which wastes time. A good player will avoid the sentry gun and instead of trying to complete the objective, attempt to destroy it, which wastes time. Now keep that in mind because we'll come back to it in a second, but first I want to explain the concept of effective health. Effective health is not the literal health number that someone or something has, but rather the amount of damage required to reduce that number to 0.
I mean, that makes sense. I think this distinction does make sense because, like, the health value itself is different, and health value itself is different. Effective health calculates buffs, debuffs, etc. Like, you can apply this to other games as well. The amount of damage that is required to take it down. Simple as. So let's say you have a mitigation on you that's like, I don't know, like 50% damage mitigation. And you have 100 health, right? I mean, dude, I can't math right now. I'm so sorry. Point being, I mean, you're probably doing what, like 100 health, 50% damage mitigation, what, 200 damage? Maybe. I don't know. I can't math right now. I'm sorry. I've been reacting for like 6.5 hours. VTubers can't do math. Point being, taking other calculations into consideration. The amount of damage that is required to drop that health bar to 0, not the actual numerical value displayed. Makes sense. There is a difference.
For example, the battalion's backup increases your actual health by 220, but blowing the banner increases your effective health to around 300. Buffing someone with the medigun increases their actual health by 50%, and popping Ubercharge on them makes their effective health, well, infinite. Pulling out the Wrangler increases the effective health of your sentry gun by 66%, which means that you can basically force your opponent to do at least 3 times as much damage to your sentry gun in order to take it down. Level 3 sentry guns have 216 health. Pressing 2 on your keyboard makes it have 648. Do you think mini sentries are annoying? Well, that 100 health can turn into 300 when the engineer presses 2 on their keyboard. Now, the unlisted downside of only being able to heal your sentry gun a third of the normal amount per swing might seem like a good thing, but against 1 or 2 players, that downside doesn't really matter that much when it's much easier to outlast an opponent who has to reload. And no, not even 5 direct hit rockets are enough to destroy a wrangled sentry gun. In fact, it's literally impossible to destroy a wrangled sentry gun with the direct hit while it's being tanked, even when using the Jag, the worst wrench for tanking your sentry gun. It's no secret that I'm not a big fan of how easy it is to tank a sentry gun just by sitting behind it and whacking it with your wrench, but that's just something that's in the game at this point, and while it's pretty annoying when you're the only one shooting it, it's nowhere near as frustrating as multiplying the effort required by 3-fold just because the engineer did something as simple as pressing 2 on their keyboard. And really, that's where the entire reason for the imbalance of the Wrangler shield comes from. It's all about the minimum amount of required effort each player or team has to give. If a team is trying to take down a single heavily guarded sentry nest, then they're going to have to enlist a medic player on their team. That medic player has to spend a minimum amount of 40 seconds building Ubercharge, then that team has to organize a push to put coordinated amount of focus fire on a wrangled sentry gun, which will require doing about 1,000 damage or more if the gun is being tanked, all of which needs to happen all at the same time. Meanwhile,
it's a lot of resources to sink into it, right? It becomes a resource sink, it becomes a time sink. You only have so many pushes like this to do in the match, and that's if you're getting everything, set up just right to be able to do these pushes. Because it's entirely possible that, you're picked off by, a sniper. It's entirely possible that a scout is just heckling you and running just your fade all game. So you only have so many of these pushes in the game to be able to overcome that obstacle.
The engineer has to press 2 on his keyboard. Do you see how there is an imbalance of effort being exchanged here? The final listed stat on the Wrangler mentions that the sentry gun is disabled for 3 seconds after the Wrangler is put away, which might seem like a minor downside, but it's actually more helpful than anything, since it makes it possible to tank the gun while wrangled in the first place. So, what do we think? Well, the Wrangler is the engineer's best weapon. Some people would call it overpowered, and I would have to agree, and that's very simply for the sole reason that it's a very good offensive tool for the engineer player who plays around his sentry gun, as well as an amazingly useful and easy to abuse defensive tool for practically anyone who builds a sentry, aka every single engineer player on Earth. The Wrangler's just got too much going for it, and it makes the engineer, which is a defensive support class, take on a third role, a tank. Sorry, Heavy, but 300 health is basically nothing compared to this baby.
Yeah,
now, in previous weapon reviews where I had criticism to give about the subject at hand, I gave my own suggestions of what I think should be changed in order to make the unlock better. I personally think that if you're going to be dishing out roast, it's only productive to present your own ideas of what can be done to fix the situation. However, I want to preface this section with the reminder that I am not a game designer. I have no idea what the best way to balance the Wrangler would be, because frankly, that's not my job. However, I do play TF2 an absurd amount. I've played with and against this weapon for a very long time, all the way back to when the Sigafu save was still a thing. My balance ideas are much more rip the band-aid off than Valve's seem to be, so I don't expect my suggestions to actually be implemented. However, if it were up to me, which it isn't, this is how I would change the Wrangler. I would get rid of the shield altogether. It's too powerful in its current state, and it adds a heavily defensive role to an already offensive weapon. Simply lowering the damage resistance to 33% or even 3% would be pointless in my opinion, because it's just not fair to your opponent how easy it is to get a free health boost to your sentry, no matter how much. The Wrangler.
I'm actually curious because like it's been a while since this video came out, right? It's been a couple years, right? Maybe question mark 7 years ago, yeah. I'm assuming stuff like this has been balanced since then. It's hard for me kind of coming into the game like this. And like I love watching legacy stuff, whether it's like, you know, Final Fantasy 14, whether hearing about players who've been around since 1.0, 2.0, and their experiences, whether it's talking with, you know, TF2 players who, you know, have been playing since the early days, whatever it is. Like I love across games hearing about people who have been in the game for a while and hearing their experiences and how things have changed. Like I love the evolution of things, right? Very much so. And the problem I run into is, especially when I react to stuff like this, I don't really have like the ability to have a reference point, if that makes sense, because I just don't. Like, so I don't know what has changed and hasn't changed, since it's entirely possible that Valve has not changed this since this. That's also entirely possible. So I'd be very curious to know what has and hasn't changed.
Wrangler is called the Wrangler for a reason. You have to use it to wrangle your sentry gun like a bull and point it in the direction you want. Having damage resistance alongside that ability is overkill, and frankly doesn't even adhere to the theme of the weapon in the first place. Over the years, I've heard multiple ideas from people that include things like splitting the Wrangler into two weapons equalizer style, making the shield only able to block one type of damage at a time like the Vaccinator, or even a suggestion that I gave in a previous video where the damage resistance is put on the engineer himself instead of a sentry gun. And I have no idea if any of these ideas would work. Like I said, I'm not a game designer. All I know is that I'm a huge fan of keeping it simple, stupid, so I'd much prefer just to remove the shield entirely. Now, I realize that completely deleting an entire stat from a weapon wouldn't go over too well with most people, which is why I'd also like to add a small but significant counterbalance. I think the Wrangler, when equipped, should give you full immunity to your own sentry gun's damage. Much like the rocket jumper or the sticky jumper, many people have suggested a sentry jumper, but honestly, I see no reason why you should be given a damage penalty for sentry jumping as engineer as it is. The reason why taking damage while rocket jumping as soldier or sticky jumping as demo man is balanced is because it's something that those classes can easily do in a split second. The engineer can only jump after he's spent 30 seconds or more setting up a level 3 sentry gun, as well as placing it in an ideal spot, which is already much more restrictive than any other explosive jumping class. So
no, what he says makes sense, because it's a lot more of an investment rather than being able to, you know, put on gunboats, to put on, you know, some sort of potential protection measure, and then just being able to aim down, aim backwards, and then bam, like you're good to go, right? Like there's a little bit more involved there. Like I get logically where he's coming from. I don't know how that really manifests itself, if I'm being honest. I don't know. I don't know how that manifests itself in terms of like actual like game design and game balance and stuff. I wouldn't know how that would affect the metagame. So, you know, I don't really have the ability to say one way or the other personally. I think it'd be interesting though. I think it'd be very interesting as a like. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to experiment with and see how that would change things. If that would be an actual good change, or if that would be something that would be a detrimental change. I think it would be detrimental. I think part of engineers, unfortunately, that is, you know, Sentry can kind of just tear them in half. But you know, I think their proposed changes do make sense. I think it does logically track, if that makes sense.
I say, just give engineer the ability to jump, self-damage not included. These suggested stats would not only give the manual control ability the spotlight it deserves, but it would also legitimize sentry jumping and raise the skill ceiling of the engineer class in general. It would reward the engineer players who practice jumping and blow open the demand for even more engineer-specific jump servers to practice on, since the strategy would actually become useful in regular games instead of remaining some silly thing to do when you're feeling cheeky. But hey,
I wonder if this also, because like advanced movement, right? Advanced movement tech generally has some sort of like a drawback to it, right? If you're gonna use the rocket jumper, cool, your rockets no longer do damage, right? But you're able to jump and you're able to market Gardener and stuff without taking damage, right? If you still want to do damage, you're taking self damage, you know, whether you're a soldier, whether you're demo man. I wonder if the immediate knock-on effect would be there would be an influx of engineer players and they would be using bullet surfing and stuff just as advanced movement techs to heckle the backline. Think like dive comp from Overwatch, right? Like you're like dashing forward, you went onto the point or into the enemy backline, drop your bubble, harass them, drop on out, right? And dive comp was a big thing during early Overwatch. It still kind of functions nowadays as I understand it, but I don't know, since we now have quote unquote Overwatch TM and Overwatch has died twice while TF2 is still being TF2. I don't have interest in playing it personally. I don't know. Like I wonder if we'd see more like dive comp style stuff.
You don't have to listen to any of the suggestions I'm giving. I don't really mind what the developers decide to do with the Wrangler, but I know that it's very unlikely that it will remain in the current overpowered state that it's in right now. Just as long as there's something done to where coordination, preparation, aim, skill, and expert positioning isn't countered by this.
I could agree with that.
Thanks for watching my internet video, and before you go, I'd like to remind you all about Dollar Shave Club. They don't just offer a refillable razor subscription, they have all kinds of stuff to make your bathroom experience awesome. Body wash, toothpaste, hair stuff, pretty much everything you need to be the best smelling, best looking, and best feeling version of yourself possible. Right now they have this great offer where you can get their shave, shower, or oral starter sets, each for only $5 US American Patriot dollars. Their shave starter set comes with an executive razor and a tube of their Dr. Carver shave butter. The shower starter set has 2 trial-sized body cleansers and 1 of their black pepper shampoo, or you can get the oral starter set, which comes with their weighty toothbrush and some premium toothpaste. If any of these starter sets sound good to you, head on over to dollarshaveclub.com/Uncle Dane to get in on this offer. That's $5 for the first box, regular price. After that, I repeat, go to dollarshaveclub.com/Uncle Dane. You guys must have cleaned them out last time or something because they decided to hit me up again for another sponsorship. Nice. So shout out to all you clean, finely shaven nibblings out there. Visiting that link and using that code enables them to enable me to keep the lights on. So I really appreciate it. And now here is Frontier Justice by Dapper Dog, aka the Uncle Dane theme, being played by yours truly in Beat Saber. Thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you nieces and nephews next time. Bye-bye.
I thought it was a good video. I'm curious to see how it's changed over the course of the years, right? To see if the weapon actually did get nerfed. And I mean, the way that he presents it, it does sound like it's really overpowered. And like, it's the way that it's presented, it is really overbearing. And honestly, it's very, that's the word I'm looking for. It's oppressive if a single button press can mitigate entire, like, just plays by a team. Like, it just, the effort just does not match. And I would agree with him on that. At least in the state that it is in this video, as a very low tier engineer. Like, yeah, I'm sure I could foobar that. I'm sure that I could get, absolutely steamrolled. But the concern is the higher levels of play, the people who are more experienced, who do know how to, exploit something like this, right? Who do know how to, tank an entire team and just tank behind their sentry, right? Like, there's a lot that goes into that. And I know that this becomes a thing in many games, honestly, right? It becomes a thing where, like, yeah, it sucks when something gets nerfed, but at the same time, if at the highest levels of play, this is causing absolutely just oppressive issues, or it's causing just inappropriate levels of damage, right? And this is very evident with Destiny 2 in a lot of the decisions, right? Something would get nerfed, and it's like, well, but why did this get nerfed, right? It got nerfed because at the highest levels of play, this thing is just doing inappropriate levels of damage, right? It's the concept of, like, well, my Yu-Gi-Oh deck could use Pot of Greed, okay? But it shouldn't, Pot of Greed should never be unbanned because, well, your deck could use it and, get help from it. What about, everyone else's meta deck that is just going to absolutely just, parabolic arc, right? It's going to parabolic curve upwards in terms of efficiency. So, I thought it was a good video, though. I thought it was great, and it really put a little bit of a spin on the Wrangler that I hadn't really dealt with before or done before. So, just kind of interesting to consider, kind of interesting to think about, and I'll have to definitely test it out and see if it's changed since this video. But thank you all for watching. Really do appreciate it. I had a lot of fun with this. Hopefully you did as well. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Wrangler. Let me know if it's changed. Let me know if it's kind of remained the same. And I'll see you all in the next one. As always, links are in the description down below.